time to see what a grizzly can do to a cobra.
Yo, Joes! Time for another Patreon special mission. This one comes from General Hector Martinez, and it's for the Patriot Grizzly tank. It was released in 2003 as part of the Spy Troops line of G.I. Joe. This is one whopper of a tank. This is one of the few Joe items that I own outside of the Real American Hero line, but I decided to pick it up a few years ago because A, the price was right, very affordable since it's not a 30-plus-year-old vintage toy, and B, it looks like it would have fit right in with the 80s line. To me, it kind of looks like what the Mauler should have been, a giant Titan on treads. Unlike the vintage toy items, you can actually see the vehicle in this box. No window, it's just out there in the open. And some schematics on the back of the box reminiscent of the classic blueprints that were included with Joe and Cobra vehicles. And some of the gimmicks this electronic tank features. First off, the name. Grizzly is the perfect name for a giant ferocious tank that will just maul you. And Patriot is a natural fit for a Joe vehicle. So natural that they already had a vehicle called the Patriot in 1992. Since Spy Troops was a different continuity, names could be reused without giving it a second thought for vehicles or characters. There is a bit of assembly required, but nothing as elaborate as the almost model-like assemblies of some of the vintage Joe vehicles. Just a cannon to attach, radar dish, machine gun, and antenna. Also gone is the vintage sticker sheet. This brute has pre-applied stickers on it. There's a Cobra head count, a subtle insignia, numbers on the back, and a Joe logo on either side. The most puzzling part for me, being an 80s Joe fan, is the driver's code name emblazoned on the front. Wild Bill? Okay, that's just weird to me. Bill will always be a helicopter pilot to me. I don't have the Spy Troops Wild Bill, but here's the Dragonfly pilot driving, and the 92 version. You can have your Wild Bill or Ace or, what's his name, drive your Grizzly if you want, but for me, it's the classic Joe tank commanders that look best in it. Modern versions, that is. I actually prefer how the modern figures look in here over the vintage ones because of how big this tank is. Since the modern figures are a bit bigger, they seem to scale a bit better. For this much tank, it's going to take the Joe's 3 best tank drivers. First, the Mobat driver, Steeler. Beside that seat is a hatch that opens up that can hold another driver. This time it's the Slugger driver, Thunder. And the hatch closes up to protect the driver, while the guy beside is left like a sitting duck. The top turret has a hatch that closes as long as the machine gun isn't installed. Once you pop it in though, the hatch will no longer close. It almost does if you point the gun at the ground. The third handler to tame this Grizzly, Mauler driver, Heavy Metal. Although I like the look of Heavy Metal manning the Heavy Metal machine gun, his arm articulation is pretty bad, and he can only hold the gun with one hand. I tell you, it's always something with these modern figures. You only need one finger to pull a trigger though. And the Grizzly's got more firepower. There's another cannon on the front, and a pair of guns that pivot on either side of the turret, and a couple of places on the turret to hold gear and weapons. The tank can carry more than just 3 drivers. This panel swings open on the back and can hold a couple of passengers too. And a holdover from classic Joe vehicles, foot pegs. These are sized about the same as the ones from the 80s, but it's a bit tight on this old gung-ho. A lot of the vintage figures have very brittle foot pegs, so don't try to force it, or that part of the foot will break right off. And the last 2 accessories, which are easy to install, are the antenna, which is made of the more bendy, rubbery type of plastic that's commonly used now, and the radar dish, which is made of the same material. And the treads are hard plastic, unlike the rubber treads used on the Mobat and the Mauler, which is fine by me because these look fantastic, and the rubber ones tend to break after a while. 4 wheels underneath let it roll around. And now for the coolest feature of the Patriot Grizzly, the electronics. Undo 2 screws underneath to install 2 C batteries. Flip the switch, and now when you pull the tank forward, It makes engine noises. And you get different sounds when you go in reverse too. Not that you'd ever need to retreat in this big Grizzly. There weren't too many real American hero vehicles that had electronics, so a Joe tank that makes its own sounds is pretty wild. But there's more than that. Up top is a compartment that holds several missiles. This tank actually fires projectiles. There's a handle hidden in the back right here that can control the cannon, as well as the machine gun. You might want to slip on some leather first though, because we're talking some major firepower. You pull out the handle, and by turning it left and right, the turret turns and is accompanied by sounds. That is really cool. And this trigger right here fires the missiles. You can roll right up to a Cobra terror drone and use the snakes for target practice. And for those hard-to-reach snakes, this knob on the top can control the machine gun to get at targets the cannon can't reach. Just remember, nobody gets shot in G.I. Joe, so you'll have to shoot at some boxes or something to get the job done. When you're all done dispensing justice, the handle folds back up into the tank. Some of these Spy Troops vehicles incorporated this handle with trigger feature, and I gotta say, after finally having tried it, I love it! It's almost like a video game. Talk about play features. And here are some size comparisons beside the Mauler and the Mobat. They look like a pair of cubs next to this Grizzly. Look at the size of this thing. It's huge! And it looks great too. Beautiful detailing and a great camo paint job on it as well. I'm really impressed. It's a worthy successor to the previous Joe tanks. No, it looks like it ate the successor. This is one big bear. But, despite its immense size, the vintage Joe tanks still leave it in the dust thanks to being motorized. But when you've got this much firepower, you can stay parked. Have a request yourself? Consider becoming a Patreon General or Ninja level supporter and give the orders. Thanks for watching. Feel free to share your thoughts on the Patriot Grizzly below, and to join the tribe, hit subscribe. Yo, Joe!